Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be discussing all the books that I read for the month of September. Now you guys are gonna have to bear with me because it is currently October 16th and I read a total of, here we go, here we start, there it goes. I read a total of 13 books. I almost didn't get that word out again. And when you read that many books, I don't know if this happens to everybody. I know there's people that read 20 books a month. When it comes to wrap-ups, I feel like I tend to forget a lot of things to discuss at the, for the video. And so sometimes I get stuck, I get frustrated, and just the fact that I can't think and talk properly makes it that much worse. So let's get into it. The first book that I read for the month of September was actually a book that I read the last week of August, and it was for the Buddy Reads to Die For that's hosted by Chandra, Janelle, and Jessica over on Instagram. It's like a book club. Every month they read a book. I've talked about it many a times and I always participate. The book that we read for August was the Roxy Letters, and so I did start this the last week of August, like I said, but I finished it, I think it was the second day of September, so that's why it's being added to this wrap-up. This is not my usual genre, and that's what I love about participating in those buddy reads, that we read all kinds of genres. And so this was a book that I would not have picked up if it wasn't for said buddy read.
Maybe I should get my... I don't know how this video is gonna go. It's that time of the month and I'm gonna cry. Let's just do a wrap-up crying, why don't we?
And while I had a lot of fun reading this, and it was funny, and all the things, I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. Now that's still a great rating, but I just found myself a lot of times like drifting off in thought while I was listening to the audiobook. Here we are following Roxy as she's going through this stage in her life. But we are following her through letters that she's writing to her ex-boyfriend. We are learning everything that's happening in her life through her ex-boyfriend, or through the letters that she's writing her ex-boyfriend. And at the beginning of the book, we know that her ex-boyfriend is moving in to live with her as a roommate, and so she's explaining the rules and the regulations and what to do and what not to do. And so the story continues from there. It's just her living her life and just going through these funny situations, and while this book is funny and was a little bit ridiculous at times, it did deal with her and her wanting a relationship and going through the motions at work and seeing her friend being promoted at work and her like stuck in this life and just things going wrong for her, things going right for her. So yeah, it was a fun time. I liked it. It was enjoyable, but at the end of the day, will I ever pick this book back up or even think about this book again? Probably not, other than what I'm telling you guys here. It's just another book under my belt, and it was good. It was a fun time. 3.5 stars. Oh, you guys, the second book that we're going to talk about, I've been at it for a while. I mean, this book showed up in my DNFs of 2019. I think some of those books, if I'm not mistaken, were probably 2018, and I sort of omitted that little information from the video. But I feel like I've been reading this book for probably 2.5 years. But I finally finished it and I'm super proud of myself and I'm super excited, and that is Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. I don't know why I feel like I always have to sing a little piece of something in all of my videos, but here we are. Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones. What a book, what a story, what a world. Yeah, this was... I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. So my whole thought process behind this book was, I'm gonna read book 1 and then we'll go from there. If I like it, I'll continue. If I don't, I know that I do want to watch the show. I've never watched the show. I think I've said this a couple times when talking about this book in other videos, that I have watched the first 2 or 3 episodes in the first season of the show, and so that really helped me to start this book, because this book is such a big, dense, huge world, and so that helped me sort of start me with the book. And as far as the characters go, and how each character intermingles, or how each character belongs in the story, who's related to who, who's friends with who, whose kingdoms is who's fighting for what, you know, because there's a lot happening in this book. So I think that me watching those couple 1, 2, 3 episodes from the show really helped me to dive into this book and not be confused. But with that being said, I feel like I'm going to continue with the show because I really liked the show. I had a little bit of issues with like all the sex scenes, but people tell me that later on in the seasons and the episodes that sort of dies down a little bit. I don't know, but other than that, I really did like the show. So I think I'm going to continue the show, and I'm going to end the book or the series in books form here. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I really did like it, but I found myself bored a lot. This is a 600-page book. You know, I know that this is a first book, and it's sort of building everything up for the story. It's setting its ground for the whole story. But I don't know that I can sit through however many books it is of boring sections, explaining of the worlds, explaining of the powers, and all of that. I'm sure it gets better from book 2 on, but as of right this moment, I have no interest in continuing reading the series. I know people are going to be mad about that because Game of Thrones has a following of devoted lovers, but just for me, the book just didn't do it. But I know that I am going to obsessively fall in love with the show. Moving on to book 3 of the month, it was a most anticipated book release for me, and that is Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Caesar.
I'm struggling, you guys. I am struggling. I'm struggling.
Clown in a Cornfield. This is such a great book for people that want to dive into the horror genre, but that are scared too, because they don't want anything too scary, too gory, and you know, they just want to dip their toes. I feel like this is a great book for that. I feel like this is perfect for the audience that this was written for, which is the YA group. In this book, we are following Quinn, and her dad have just moved in to this small town. Her mom passed away and things have just been rough, so the dad decides to up and start somewhere else. He's got a job in this small town as a doctor. He's a doctor. They move, they get this house. Things are kind of rough in this town. There was a corn factory in the town, and it ended up closing down, and this really affected the town. It really cracked the town in half, as it says in the synopsis. From where Quinn lives, from her bedroom, she can see this factory, and it looks like it has been burned down. The burning down of the factory is blamed on teens. Teens are just looked at as troublemakers. You know, kids are just gonna be kids, teens are gonna be teens, they keep living their life. They're having a party one night, and out of nowhere, this killer clown comes out and starts shooting at them and trying to kill them. And that's what the story is about this town broken in half, and this clown that comes out of nowhere and starts murdering people. So now they're trying to find out who this clown is, and the story goes from there. I really did enjoy the plot line, and I really did enjoy the characters. For me, it was lacking a little something. I don't know what that something is. I love slasher novels. I love slasher horror. It's just something that gets your heart pumping, and I felt like I didn't get my heart pumping enough, or that my heart wasn't pumping with this book. And 95% of the times when I'm reading a slasher, That's what I'm feeling, is my heart pulsing. I'm like looking, like if I'm looking around the corner to see if the killer is coming, and I just didn't get that from this. I think that's where I felt the disconnect. I really did enjoy Quinn's character. I enjoyed all the characters that were in the book, but it was just missing a little something for me. But I do recommend this for people that are just not into horror, that want to start, that want to dip their toes in. This is the perfect book. If you want to start reading slasher, this is a great starting point. Now we're gonna get into a 5-star book that I read, and that is Hell on Mars by J.Z. Foster and Justin M. Woodward. I was sent this book for review by the authors. I was sent the first 3 books. I believe there's going to be a total of 7 books, but they're pretty short, and the other 2 books are about this size as well. I love this so much. I always forget how much I love sci-fi horror. We are following a group, a crew that has been sent to the Felicity station to check out what's going on because they have lost communication with the Felicity station. And so Felicity, I don't know why that's just not sounding right to me. And so they send the perihelion to go and check up to see what's going on. Obviously, we are following both storylines. We're following what's happening in Felicity. We open with something going wrong in the Felicity, and then we're seeing the crew that's going there and wondering, hey, what's happening? So you're like, oh, so what happened at the Felicity? We got alien monsters invading the Felicity, y'all. There was this door or this portal that was open to another world, and aliens came in and started attacking and taking over the Felicity. So this is why we have lost communication with them. I'm saying we because I'm inputting myself in the story, okay? Because it was that good. And so when the folks over from the perihelion, is that what it is? I always have to look because I always forget what that name is. When the folks over at the perihelion get there, you know, they find themselves in almost like a little bit of a flooded station. They don't see anybody. They're trying to figure out what happened. The electricity is down, and but soon they will find out and they will see the creatures that have attacked this station. This was so good. It was very gripping. I loved the writing. I love the characters. I love the development of the characters and the development of the world. There's a part of this book where we see the aliens' perspective of it, and that was my favorite part of the book. I don't know if that's a spoiler. I hope that's not a spoiler, but we know that there's aliens. It's in the synopsis. It was just a grand old time. I highly recommend this, especially if you love sci-fi horror. This is where it's at, and it's short, although it is going to be, I believe, 7 books long. They are short, and they go by quick. I gave this one 5 stars. The next book I read is part of the Fearing World, and I did receive this book for review. This is not the book, but this is The Fearing. This is the World of the Fearing. The World of the Fearing has 4 books. It's by John F. D. Taff, and I've only read book 1. I will link up above the wrap-up where I talk about this book, but I love that book. And when I ended up buying that book, I was gonna go ahead and buy all 4 books, but I was like, you know what, let me see how it is first, and then if I like it, I will buy the rest. Now, these books are so short that I should have just bought them all, because when I finished this book, I was obsessed with the world. The world is coming to an end, but we don't know what's happening. All we know is that in different parts of the world, different things are happening, and we're following different characters in these, I think it's 4 different states or regions. And each person is going, you know, we have like the high school, and we have an old couple that's like traveling. We have this mysterious man that feels like he's the one that's bringing on the end of the world, where he knows what's going to happen, and so on and so forth. And so it was a 4-book series, and that was that. Well, the author came out with Blood and Brimstone, which is a spin-off from The Fearing. This is still the same world. It's the same thing is still happening, but we are following a set of characters that come up in book 3. Now, everybody, when these 2 characters came out in book 3, everybody's like, where did they come from? What happened? Who are they? And so this is their story. Here we follow Tim and Pam? Tam. Timothy and Tam. Tammy. Wow. And so the end of the world is coming along, and Timothy is one day sitting in his office and he's just thinking about how sucky his life is. He's going through a divorce, his wife is a bitch, or you know, all that stuff. But he does know that when the end of the world comes, he's ready, because he is a doomsday prepper. He's got food, MREs, he's got water, he's got it all. He is ready. And what do you know? In the middle of when he's talking about that he's ready, the end of the world comes. He hooks up with this girl, Tam. He's in the parking lot trying to make it to one of his posts where he has an accumulation of things in the middle of the woods. And he runs into Tam, and they just take on the world together. I loved it. This is gory. This is descriptive. This is a dark world, but it is so fun. The characters are amazing. The storyline is amazing. I fell in love. This you can read on its own. You don't need to read the series to read this book. If you love apocalyptic horror, I think this is the book for you. This book has illustrations in it. I'm not going to show you too much because some of the illustrations can be like spoilery, but like for this one, for instance, the illustrations are amazing. The Fearing Blood and Brimstone, I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Next up, we have In the Valley of the Sun by Andy Davidson. Oh gosh, I don't know where to start off with this book. Okay, let me start off by saying that this book is very, very well loved. When you go look at the reviews, I think there's like 4 or 5 5-star reviews or 4-star reviews in a row, and then you have your like DNF, and then you have another 4 to 5-star review, and then you have like a 2-star review. So I'm in the minority here. First, I ended up giving this book 3 stars, so not a bad rating, but not a super good rating as well either. Here we're following Travis, and he is not a very good person. He seeks women and does very bad things to them. He's searching for someone, and while he's searching for someone, he's hurting women along the way. One night he comes across this very pale woman, and next thing you know, he wakes up in the morning without any woman in his camper and full of blood, but he can't remember anything. So he continues his life, but he's continuing his life with a little of a weird hunger, and we're following that and him sort of kind of trying to discover what happened, what's going on. He comes across this mother and son, and this mother owns this hotel or motel, and she ends up hiring him to do little jobs here and there throughout the motel. But soon they discover that he's really not who he says he is, and there's something weird going on with him. And then we're also following a sheriff who is looking for a man that keeps murdering women. I feel like I was so confused through parts of this book. When I closed this book, I knew that I liked it, but I didn't at the same time, if that makes sense. I don't know if there's somebody out there that can relate to when I say that, like liking a book but not liking it at the same time. I feel like half of the times I was so confused with what was going on. I felt like I didn't know if I was reading a flashback or if I was reading in real life at real time events. I felt like half of the times I felt like if I was in a fever dream reading this. It was just confusing most of the time. I think I was just expecting more than what I got. I actually buddy read this book with my friend Tali, and she loved it. She ended up giving it either 4 or 5 stars. She really enjoyed it. She did get confused as well when we were reading it, and we sort of kept going back and forth like, wait, what is happening? Wait, is this happening? Wait. But the overall storyline is great. I just feel like the execution was a little bit jarbled at times and a little bit confusing. So 3 stars, still a good book. I recommend it because everybody seems to love it. I'm in the minority, so maybe you'll like it too. The next book was a gazillion stars. It's not even a book, it's a graphic novel, and it is Pumpkinheads. Oh my gosh, did I adore this little graphic novel. This is the best thing that anybody has ever written or illustrated ever in life. This is written by Rainbow Rowell, illustrated by Faith Erin Hicks. First of all, let's give it up to Faith because the illustrations here are delicious. They're so cute. I brought in the fall season this year with pumpkin heads. I had set it in my head that I wanted to read this the first day of fall, and I bought this earlier on in the year. I think it was in the winter. So I've been waiting since then to read this because I wanted to read it in the fall time, and I did, and it was the best thing ever. I read it outside. It was a little bit cool. It was perfect. I related to one of the characters in this book so much that it hurt my heart of how much I related to her. Here we are following Josiah, and he works at this pumpkin patch. He's an exemplary, I don't know why I try to use hard words. He is like one of the best employees. He prides himself in his work. He's always on time. He's always fantastic to customers. And this is the last year that he's going to work at the pumpkin patch. This is a seasonal job, obviously, and he is a senior. He's about to graduate, and they're about to hit life. And he has a best friend, a seasonal best friend, Deja. This is the one that I related to. And Deja also works at the pumpkin patch. He's just sad that this is his last year, and he's always wanted to experience the pumpkin patch, but because he's always been working, he's never had a chance to really go and experience the pumpkin patch. And so Deja's like, well, we're gonna go on a little trip. And instead of working on their last day of work, they go around. They're actually trying to find someone in the pumpkin patch, a little crush that Josiah has. And so they go on this little adventure where they're just looking for her, and they're like, they keep being taken around and around, like, oh, she's over here, oh, she's over there. His crush is, her name is Marcy. When I read that out, I couldn't. I couldn't. And so yeah, we're just following them along as they're trying to find Marcy so that he can express his love for her. But things don't turn out the way that he plans. Like I said, this was so fun. This was so sweet, so warm. I finished reading this and I was crying because of how sweet it was. Deja is a foodie like me, and every time like she would see like a candy apple or kettle corn, she was like, I need a snack, let's go to the snack. You know, she was just always driven by the food, which is me. And she was just so perfect. She was like a plus size girl like me, and so this was just all sorts of fun. Of course, I gave this 5 stars. I highly recommend it, especially if you love graphic novels, and even if you don't like graphic novels, I think this is a great graphic novels to start with, because I think the story just takes over, and the illustrations, like I said 2 times, just makes it that much better. So this is probably my favorite of the month. We're getting into the 5-star, guys, because my next read was also a 5-star. This was our Stacks of Strange book for September, and it was I'm Thinking of Ending Things. I'm not going to talk too much about this because we've had a live show on Range channel. I will link that up above and down below if you want to see all of our thoughts. And they ended up watching the movie in a Netflix watch party. I couldn't join, although I'm told that I really didn't miss anything, especially how much I love this book. They told me to steer clear of the movie. And so that's what I plan on doing. But yeah, 5 stars. This is a very polarizing book. People love it, people hate it, people DNF it, people don't get it. I get it, I understand. Because when I finished this book, I was like, wait, what? But as soon as I stopped reading it, I wanted to read it again. Here we are following a girlfriend and her boyfriend on a trip to meet his parents for the first time. And as she's going along, she's really the one narrating the story. And we're learning how they came to be in a relationship. We're just learning things about them. And then the story goes from there. But it's so much more than just a girl meeting a guy's parents for the first time. I want to know down below if you've read this and if you love this book or not. I want to know your thoughts on it below, because like I said, this is a very polarizing book. And since I mean, I was obsessively in love with this book. I still am. And I'm always curious to see what people think about it, especially because I know so many people don't like it. So let's chat about I'm Thinking of Ending Things down below. Next up, I read The Honey Don't List by Christina Lauren. I've always wanted to read more of Christina Lauren, especially since reading The Unhoneymooners. I loved that book. And although I didn't love this book as I did The Unhoneymooners, I thought it was good. Here we are following a couple, a married couple. They're huge in like the designing and the furniture and the decorating business. They have shows, almost like a Joanna, what are they? Those two, I forgot their names. Joanna Gaines. You guys know who I'm talking about. It's almost like them. And then we are actually following their story through a series of interviews, of police interviews, because something bad happened, but you don't know what it is until the end of the book. But there's interviews between her assistant, Carrie, and his assistant. He's really not the assistant. He was hired as an engineer for the business, but he ends up almost being like Rusty's assistant. And so it's them two being interviewed, obviously separate, by the police, trying to figure out what happened this one night that something went wrong. These two, the married couple, they have this like facade that everything is great, that everything is fine. They're like a happy couple, but behind the scenes, that's so not the case. And so it's just following that storyline. I think I was comparing this a little bit to The Unhoneymooners. And while I did find this funny and I still laughed and I still awed and I still owed, it just wasn't the same story in the sense of the meat of the story. You know what I mean? There was a disconnect somewhere for me. Either way, I did enjoy it. It was a good time while I read it, but I probably won't even think about this book ever again. I am going to keep it because I do love the cover, but I ended up giving this book 3 stars. Oh, the next book that I read, I was actually invited to the Currently Reading book club pick for September that is hosted by Allie Dunn, and we read The Last Time I Lied in September, which I was so excited about because September, as you guys know, was my birthday month. I've always wanted to read this book. It's a slasher book, so for my birthday, slasher, it was just perfect. Thank you so much, Allie, if you're watching this, for inviting me to read this book with you guys. This is a little bit tricky for me because I may be being biased here because I love campy slasher novels, and that's what this is. Here we are following Emma, and she was at a camp once. It was her first time at a summer camp, and she gets roomed or bunked with these 3 other girls that are much older than her, and she forms kind of a friendship with these girls. But one night, these girls go missing. And so I think the camp ends up closing after that. That camp was a very well-known, very well-loved camp. It had been open for years. But ever since the disappearance of these girls, the camp was closed. All those years after the camp, this girl, Emma, is just wondering what happened to these 3 girls. It's haunted her all her life. She wants to find out. And she has the opportunity to go back to the campgrounds as an adult, as an instructor, because they're reopening the camp and the owner has called her and asked her to come. She's in the art world, in the art scene, and she's asked her to come and teach art at this campground. And she takes this as an opportunity to go and find out what happened to these girls. She wants to retrace the steps of what happened that night, but she also has a secret from that night. This is one of those books that, for me at least, I didn't know what direction it was taking, where it was going, and I didn't even have an inkling as to who the culprit of these disappearances were. I found that this was so great. As of now, I have only read 3 of the 4 books from Riley Sager, and I will have to say that this one is my favorite one so far. Lock Every Door is probably my second favorite, and Final Girls being my last favorite. But I really did enjoy this. It had my heart pumping. I enjoyed the storyline, the writing, of course, and I highly recommend this if you haven't read this. I think this is the perfect book to read in the summertime because it has to do with summer camp and things like that. So I ended up giving this one 5 stars. We're down to the last 3. Next one being Night Shoot by David Sodergren. I finally read a David Sodergren book. Oh my gosh, I've been wanting to read this. I own all of his books, almost all of his books. He just came out with a new one, Maggie's Grave, that I really need. But I've owned his books for at least a year already, and I finally got one under my belt. This was not what I was expecting. This book is so good. Here we are following a group of college students, and this is their last project to graduate. They are, I believe they are like in film school or film classes, and so they have to film their last movie to graduate. I think it's the main director from the group of kids, they're adults, they're in college, but one of the director ends up getting his father to convince his uncle, so the kid's uncle, the brother of the father, to let them film into Crawford Manor, which is like this mansion, and it's all like decorated perfectly for what they want to do, and they make horror films. But things happen to where they have to leave by a certain time and they haven't finished the film, so they go and they break into the manor at nighttime. Like the owner, his uncle, ends up leaving, and they break into the manor to finish filming. But there is a reason why they were supposed to finish filming at 8 o'clock. Because after 8 o'clock, the monsters come out and play. Basically. First of all, let me tell you that this is a slasher novel. And so I knew that I was getting into some slashery things. But the gore in this is real. It's not the goriest book that you will ever read. By no means is it the goriest book, but it is gorier than I thought it was going to be. I still have a couple questions about the evil part of the novel, which I wish would have been discussed more or dived into more. But at the end of the day, this is a slasher novel, and it is a homage to the 80s slasher horror genre. And so, you know, most of the time in those movies, you end up with unanswered questions, and I felt the same with this, but this was just so good. The main character was amazing. She's the one that helps with the wardrobe and makeup and all of that out of the crew, and following her along this adventure was fantastic. Be warned for obviously gore and blood and guts and murder and all the good things that I love in a book. This was fantastic. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Next up, we have Captain Clive's Dream World. This was a Nightworms book party, so thank you so much to Nightworms and to the author and to the publishing company for sending this book our way for review. We all did a Nightworm book party for the Nightworms blog. I will leave that posted down below. The post has already gone up and has already gone live, so I will link that down below so that you guys can check out all of our thoughts for this book. But wow, I enjoyed this book so much. It was so weird, and I had never read a book like this before. It almost gave me like Fantastic Land vibes, but not, because this takes place in this community where everything is like peachy and grand. This community has this own amusement park, and this amusement park and this community was built by Captain Clive, and this community is called Angels and Hope. And basically this is like a utopia kind of society where they all live happy, they all have no troubles, none of them it seems like they don't work, like they all just have happy lives. But one day this deputy, he's investigating something, a murder, and just things go wrong, and he is transferred to this town as their police officer. And so he doesn't want to go, he doesn't want to be transferred, but too bad, so sad, he gets transferred to Angels and Hope. But when he gets there, he just gets a sensation that just something isn't right. Think like the Stepford Wives, something like that. It's something like sinister is happening. Everybody's just too happy-go-lucky. It's just weird. And then there's this amusement park where he goes and visits, and it's just, there's just something happening, and something is bothering him, and he's trying to get to the bottom of it. One time this girl goes missing, and she actually seeks him out for help when they are attacking her or following her, and she's like, they're gonna kill me, they're gonna kill me. And next thing you know, he just can't find her anywhere, and he starts investigating. But when he starts investigating, people start turning on him, and they start trying to unvalidate his search and his thoughts. It was such a weird book, but it was so good. I really did enjoy it. I didn't even know what I was getting myself into. You know, it was a review book. I was going in blind again. Surprise, surprise. But I was just pleasantly surprised by it. I loved the scenery, the descriptions. I loved the writing in it. I loved how they had the amusement park, and that amusement park was set to rival Disney World, you know? And so the whole backstory to the town and the creator was just so good. It was so sinister, and I do highly recommend this book. I ended up giving it 4 stars. And the last and final book that I read, finally, for the month was Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. Here we are following a group of teenagers. It's their last summer, their last hurrah, and they want to play one last prank. But as things tend to do in horror novels, it goes wrong. These sets of friends, one day when they were really young, they end up finding this mannequin, and that mannequin, he was like abandoned. The mannequin was abandoned in like a little river stream or like a little ditch. And so that mannequin became part of their life for a really long time. But then it's sort of like, you know, you get older and toys and things kind of dwindle down. But for this one last night, they want to bring in the mannequin for the last prank, and so things don't work out. So we're just following Sawyer, which is our main character, and is the one that came up with the last prank. We're just following him, trying to solve the problem and be the hero of the story. This was so much fun. It's a really short book. It's a one-sitter, and I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Highly recommend, especially if you like coming of age stories. Even though this is not really a coming of age story, it has that sense and feeling to it. So that's it, you guys. Those are all the books that I read for the month of September. That was hard to remember everything. Let me know what your favorite book for September was. What was your least liked book for September? Let's chat books in the comments section. Every now and then, I like to throw this in there. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you like what you see, you might think about subscribing. Hit that little subscribe button so that you don't miss a video from me, and hit that notification bell as well. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!